On October 21st, 2025, EASA issued an Emergency Airworthiness Directive, number 2025-0230-E. Now, this is a critical safety update for some specific Textron 182 series aircraft, the ones modified with SMA engines. In this explainer, we're going to break down exactly what you need to know and what you need to do to make sure you're compliant.
So, here's what we'll cover. We'll look at the unsafe condition that kicked this all off, which aircraft and parts this applies to, the specific actions and deadlines you've got to meet, what exactly counts as a serviceable part, and then we'll wrap up with a final compliance summary. Okay, first up, let's dig into the unsafe condition itself. It's really important to understand the root cause here and the safety risk that prompted this emergency AD.
So, what was the trigger? Well, it's pretty straightforward. EASA started getting reports of damaged intercooler air hoses on aircraft that had the SMA SR305 engine installation. This wasn't just a theoretical problem, This was a real issue being seen out in the fleet.
And the directive connects this component failure to an immediate and pretty significant risk. See, a damaged intercooler hose leads directly to a loss of manifold pressure. In a turbocharged engine like this one, that means a sudden and really critical loss of engine power. It's a direct cause and effect. And that loss of power, well, that can escalate very, very quickly. We're talking about a situation that could easily require a forced landing. The bottom line is, this represents a direct threat to the aircraft and, of course, to the safety of everyone on board. All right, next section, applicability. This is probably the most critical first step for you. Understanding if this AD even applies to your aircraft, because the requirements are very, very specific. So this AD applies to a whole range of Textron, Cessna, and Reims-made 182 models. But here's the crucial part. It only affects aircraft, and this is regardless of serial number, that have been modified with that SMA SR305 engine under a couple of specific EASA supplemental type certificates, or STCs. If you don't have that specific engine mod, this AD doesn't apply to you. And here are the components at the very heart of the issue. The directive calls out 6 specific part numbers for those intercooler inlet and outlet hoses. This right here is the list your maintenance and supply chain teams need to identify and manage your parts inventory. Now, to make things interesting, the AD divides the affected fleet into 2 different groups, and it's all based on which STC was used for that engine modification. Group 1 aircraft are the ones modified under STC 1001-3975. Group 2 are the ones under STC 1001-6495. Knowing which group your aircraft falls into is absolutely essential because it determines your compliance deadline. Okay, now we're getting to the core of it, the required actions and their deadlines. This is what every single operator, camo, and maintenance team needs to execute, and frankly, without any delay. The directive lays out a really clear 3-step process. First, you've got to do an initial inspection and then repetitive inspections of all the affected hoses, and you have to follow the instructions in the SMA service bulletin. Second, if you find any damage at all, you must correct it by replacing the part before the next flight. There is absolutely no grace period here. And third, all affected parts have to be replaced before they hit their new mandatory life limit.
And these compliance deadlines are immediate. For Group 1 aircraft, that initial inspection was required before the very next flight after October 20th. For Group 2, the deadline is before the next flight after October 23rd. These tight timelines really show you how serious this is. And after that first check, you have to repeat the inspection at intervals not to exceed 50 flight hours. On top of the inspections, the AD introduces a hard life limit for replacement. Every single affected hose must be removed from service before it racks up 500 total flight hours since it was first installed. That is a mandatory retirement life, no exceptions. So this all brings us to a really key definition that's meant to prevent any confusion and make sure everyone is compliant. What exactly does EASA consider a serviceable part that you're actually allowed to install? The definition is strict, so listen closely. A part is serviceable if it is brand new. Simple enough. But if it's a used part, it has to meet 2 conditions. First, it has to have less than 500 total flight hours. And second, it must have passed that required inspection with no damage found within the last 7 days before you go to install it. Not one or the other, both conditions have to be met.
All right, let's summarize the key takeaways and look at the official outlook from EASA. This is the essential info you need to be communicating to your teams right now. Now, this is a really critical piece of information taken directly from the directive itself. ESA states that this is an interim action. So what does that mean for you? It means you should be prepared for potential follow-up actions. The situation is still being monitored, and the requirements could change. This really brings us to the most important question for your operation. Given the urgency and the details here, are your technical, planning, and management teams all on the same page? Are they fully aligned to ensure you're compliant and your fleet is safe?
So, the final instructions are these. First, make sure you've got seamless coordination going between your camo, planning, and maintenance teams. Everyone has to be talking to each other. Second, confirm that every single affected aircraft will meet all deadlines for both inspection and replacement. And finally, for the complete authoritative requirements, always, and I mean always, refer back to the official source documents. That's EASA AD 2025-0230-E and the related SMA Aero Engine Service Bulletin. Your compliance depends on it.